Good morning, everyone. My name is Sanna Alaranta and I work at Lux Innovation, and I'm here today to present you Horizon Europe energy part of the Horizon Europe program, energy specific part of the program. I am the national contact point for Luxembourg for climate, energy, and mobility topics, as well as social sciences and humanities. And without further introduction, on this slide you see the agenda. So firstly, I will explain a little bit very briefly who we are, Lux Innovation, RDI support team, national contact point for Horizon Europe program. Then I will go through a brief overview of Horizon Europe to put you in the mindset. This might be something that you've already heard, but just to briefly remind you what it is all about, and also the intervention logic that is, in my opinion, very important to understand. Then I will go to the cluster 5, which is the climate, energy, mobility sub-program of the Horizon Europe program. Here I have prepared some overview and also looking at the missions and the partnerships that are linked to cluster 5 and that can be relevant for you for energy. And then I will go to the 2 different destinations of the energy part of the cluster. And finally, I have a slide on what other funding programs, EU funding programs, you might consider relevant for you, as well as some tips and tricks from my side. Here I wanted to say, so please use the questions part for your questions if you have any. I would then try to take them up at the end of the webinar if we have the time. But you're always welcome to come back to us by email, by calling, to ask more questions. And here I will not go into the basics of the program. There might be some terms or rules or whatever it might be that is unclear to you or unfamiliar. So please don't hesitate to come back to us with any questions you have. And then going briefly, so who we are. So Lux Innovation is the national innovation agency for Luxembourg that has several services and initiatives and support for mainly companies to support the Luxembourg economy. And our department, our team, so the European funding team, we are the national contact point for Luxembourg for Horizon Europe, and we are there to support both private, so companies, or public organizations to apply for Horizon programs. Here briefly, so you can see our faces. This is the team at the moment. So we try to cover the whole program. It might be that you don't find a specific suitable topic for you in the cluster 5, for instance, so you are more than welcome to come back to us, and with the team we can identify opportunities for you. And if you, well, now we don't see each other live, but hopefully in the future. So if you see those faces around, for instance, in Belval, you can come and talk to us about the Horizon funding. Here briefly in one slide, our support services, so what we can offer. So we are talking about, as you know, by the way, it says Horizon 2020 when it should say Horizon Europe, but we are talking about mostly collaborative and competitive projects. And our aim is to support you from the start to the end, which should be then hopefully at some point successful EU-funded projects. And of course, even beyond, when you have the grant, we can also support you with your questions there. So basically, what we are there to do for you is we can help you to identify the relevant opportunities for you. So you can even come with your idea, your topic that you're interested in, and we can do a screening of topics that might fit you. Then we help you to develop your idea into projects, and then from there going on towards identifying the relevant good partners for you in Europe, um, seeking, looking at the looking at working with the best, especially if you're more newcomer to the program. It's good to work with those who are experienced and look for a good coordinator who might take you then on board. We are there for any technical support that you need. We organize a lot of training. It's been a bit more tricky now with Corona times, so we are in online mode. We organize these kind of info sessions. We can also take up your ideas for training needs that you have. And then what is very important, we can offer a critical proposal review towards the end. So before the submission, we hope for 2 weeks of before the deadline that we could see the proposals to give you some advice. Not so much on the technological research aspect, but more on we've seen a lot of proposals, what is expected where, and what are the good practices, how to make it as impactful and convincing as possible. And then we are there for any legal and financial questions you might have. So this very briefly, what I wanted to mention here is that while we are a national contact point for Luxembourg, we also represent Luxembourg in the meetings with the other member states and European Commission. So normally we get information very early. And so you are welcome to get in contact, get in touch to get information on the topics, on the work programs as soon as it is possible. It's very important to start preparing your proposals early as possible. Then going to our Horizon Europe overview, I will try not to spend too much time here so we can get to the main focus of this webinar. This is just a reminder of the structure. I'm sure you've seen it, you know it, with its 3 pillars. And the idea here has been from Horizon 2020 to Horizon Europe that it's an evolution, not revolution. Here, what I wanted to say, so we have this webinar today is part of our Horizon Europe webinar series. And we also had the Horizon Europe launch event in 1st of December last year. So we will have these events to cover more or less the whole program. And you are welcome to go to our website to either look at the recordings from the past webinars and the launch event, or sign up for what is coming next. And for any outstanding questions, please come back to us. The focus of today, so we will look at the Pillar 2, Global Challenges and European Industrial Competitiveness, where you have thematic sub-programs, work programs under it. Altogether 6. We have health, we have cluster 2, which is focusing on the social sciences, humanities, research more, so culture, creativity, and inclusive society. We have the security work program. Then we have cluster 4, digital industry and space. Then cluster 5, climate, energy, and mobility. And finally, cluster 6, focusing on food, agriculture, and bioeconomy and environment. And the focus today is the cluster 5, and more specifically there, the energy focus, the energy area. And a little bit about the cluster 5 overall budget. So we have, it's the second biggest, not too far away from the biggest one, digital industry and space. So we have 15.2 billion euros for 7 years for this cluster. Before going into the cluster 5 and the energy area, so here just to remind you that, of course, there is relevance in the other clusters. In Pillar 2, mainly here I have written down the cluster for digital industry and space. This could be the most relevant besides the climate, energy, and mobility. I have there, for instance, as an example, the destination 1's climate neutral, circular, and digitized production. And there is a lot of synergies and over kind of interconnections with Cluster 4 and Cluster 5. So please do come back to us to know more about Cluster 4 if you're interested. And then I also took the Cluster 6 for energy relevance. So here it's more it's natural resources, so the biomass related in terms of energy. But there can be linkages with other clusters. So for instance, for buildings, the cybersecurity aspect, or in even culture, creativity, and inclusive society, if you're interested in the buildings, energy in buildings, here you have, for instance, the cultural heritage buildings and so on and so forth. So just for you to keep in mind. And finally, the pillar 3, the Innovative Europe part, you have the EIC, which is financing deep tech innovation. So this might be interesting for you, especially if you are SMEs and startups doing very disruptive innovations. So here I've listed down a few specifically, while it's normally, as far as I understand, more bottom-up in terms of topics, there is some special focus related to energy, and I've listed it there. Here my colleague Stefano is in charge, so if you're interested, I would put you in contact with him. But then, I think we're well in time. Before going deeper into the Cluster 5 and the energy, here, I wanted to remind you of the big picture behind Horizon Europe program. As most of you would know, you're probably familiar with Horizon 2020 and maybe have even applied before. So we have a change in emphasis or rhetorics or the reasoning behind the program and the aims, while Horizon 2020 was more focused on the jobs, growth, competitiveness. Horizon Europe has an emphasis, or what it aims to achieve is this twin transition, which is the green and the digital transition. So here, this is good to keep in mind, especially, I think it's very much the both, but of course the Green Deal growth strategy, which was announced over a year ago by the President Ursula von der Leyen. The Horizon Europe is very much trying to reach the objectives under the Green Deal. And of course, the digital strategy as well. And what I have added here that has increased its importance versus coming from Horizon 2020 to Horizon Europe is the UN. So United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is the social, economic, and environmental goals. So keep that in mind when you write your proposals. Not just looking at the most obvious UN SDGs, but if your proposal could have an impact on several SDGs, do consider it and write it clearly down. It will certainly give you some extra points. The overall budget with what to try to aim and achieve those objectives for Horizon Europe, we finally got the budget agreement in December, so we have 95.5 billion euros for 7 years. And just to remind you, the European Green Deal, which should be very relevant for you if you're looking at energy. So just briefly, it has 8 policy pillars under it, one focusing on energy, so supplying clean, affordable, and secure energy, which is relevant especially for the destination 3 of the energy part that we will discuss later. And what is also very relevant is the building and renovating in an energy and resource efficient way, where you have an entire call area under Cluster 5 under energy. But keep in mind the policy pillars, catch up on what is coming in terms of initiatives on legislation, roadmaps, public hearings, so on and so forth. And the main aim, of course, to reach a climate neutral Europe by 2050. And here I would like to remind you also of the one very important principle of the Green Deal, which is the just transition, so leaving no one behind. Also in energy proposals, keep in mind the social aspects, and where relevant, try to bring in the behavioral, the SSH, social sciences and humanities in your proposal, and this would certainly, in many cases, it would improve the quality of your proposal. Then going into the impact logic of the whole program. So here we start to come from the European Commission policy priorities and seeing how that is translated into the Horizon Europe program so from the policy priorities to key strategic orientations for research and innovation, which is then further translated into expected impacts. And here there is a link to destinations, which is a new word in Horizon Europe. We didn't have it in Horizon 2020. I will explain that a little bit more. But here destinations are already then under the work programs, and from destinations we go to topics where you have expected outcomes. So we don't anymore have the word impact as it used to be in Horizon 2020, but it's expected outcomes. So here we come to the topic level. So here in kind of other way presented more or less the same thing. So you have on the first line, you have the Horizon Europe strategic plan in different steps, and how that is then linked to the work programs. And you will see this, the work program, look at the different parts, the destinations, and what is referenced there in terms of the strategic plan. And I have highlighted in yellow. So besides that, you would, of course, under the destinations, you have the topics, you have the expected outcomes and the scope. So of course, you would read those and build your proposal accordingly. But keep in mind the destination, what is highlighted as importance there, and what is the expected impact, and then thinking all the way to the twin transition and the UN SDGs. So keep in mind this intervention logic and the overall impact and the aims of the program when you build your proposals. And then quickly a slide on, because it is a little bit new how compared to Horizon 2020, how the work program is structured. So you have the different clusters, as you already saw. Under them, you have different destinations. Under them, call areas, and then eventually the topics. And under the line, you have how it looks like inside one topic. So you have topic, then you have conditions. So that means which funding type, which technology readiness level, and so on and so forth. Then you have expected outcome, and then only the scope. So just for you to understand. I hope you're listening and following. I'm not too fast, not too slow. Here, a snapshot or an overview of how it looks like inside the cluster 5. So we are now talking about a huge work program that merges 3 thematic areas: climate, energy, and mobility. That means that it's a huge work program. And the idea of putting these things together is very much the twin transition, that when we move towards achieving a digital and green transition, these things will be more and more interlinked and should not be seen as separate programs. So you have the climate parts with 1 destination, you have energy with 2 destinations, and mobility with 2. And there is 1 destination that tries to cover the cross-sectoral solutions that look at issues and topics that are relevant for all the 3. And here I will have a slide on that later on. What is very relevant for you if you're looking at the cluster 5 and energy are the missions and the partnerships. So under Horizon Europe, the novelty that we didn't have in Horizon 2020 are these so-called missions. So the mission thinking. And the sending the man on the moon, clear mission with kind of clear targets and tackling with the great challenges of our day, of today. Here you see the different 5 missions you have. You have one on healthy waters, you have one on cities, one on soils, one on cancer, curing cancer, and then you have one on climate adaptation. And what the linkage here is to clusters is that they are entirely under the Pillar 2, the clusters work programs. So the funding also to the mission comes from the Pillar 2. It's up to 10% during the first 3 years of the program. Then you have the European partnerships, which have existed before. What has changed for Horizon Europe is that the approach has been streamlined, so we have much less partnerships than in Horizon 2020. And the aim here has been to reach more impact by having less partnerships and a more focused and streamlined approach, which should be easier for applicants to understand. So instead of having several different instruments, you have only 3, which are institutionalized, co-programmed, and co-funded. And here, so what is the relationship with the clusters? So the European partnerships are linked to the clusters always. Why the yellow balloon is a little bit outside the cluster? That's because the institutionalized partnerships that require a legal base and a dedicated structure are outside the cluster work programs. So you wouldn't see those topics inside the clusters, if that is clear. If that is unclear, you're always welcome to come back to us. So keep in mind for cluster 5, there is actually specifically the mission on cities is relevant for the energy topics as well. And there is an entire area on cities and communities. But because we are not yet ready with the missions to implement them directly under the work programs, there is a preparatory phase that is ongoing. So we don't have, I think we have 2 CSA topics under the cities part only for 2021, and hopefully we will have much more topics for 2022 in a work program update. So keep that in mind, because there are topics that are relevant for energy as well. For topics relevant to the partnerships, there are several in cluster 5. Keep in mind when thinking about partners or finding out more about the topics, where they come from, keep in mind the partnership, the actors, the association behind it, and the strategic research and innovation agenda that they have developed. And if it's very relevant, if a partnership is very relevant for you, you can even consider joining the partnership. This normally means a membership fee, but it might make sense. Normally we see, besides that you join the community, you can even participate in influencing the priorities and the topics that would come under the partnerships. And we can see that there's clearly the success rate will be enhanced normally with joining the partnerships and joining the community. And here I have listed some of the partnerships under cluster 5 that are relevant for energy. There are other partnerships as well. Again, cluster 4 could have some relevance for you. So this is not the entire list, but you see the most important ones for energy. So moving forward, here I wanted to show you the destination 2. So under the cluster 5, the cross-cutting destination, because there is some relevance for you. So there's the batteries part, which refers to a battery partnership. There is the emerging breakthrough technologies and climate solutions that has relevance for energy as well, very much. Then there is the citizen and stakeholder engagement, which is more how to bring on board the citizens. And this is more with SSH research combined with then more the engineering sciences as well. And then finally, you have the communities and cities where definitely there is energy relevance. But if you're interested in that part, for instance, positive energy, uh, city areas, come back to me and I will check what we can find for possibly coming in 2022. Now, I hope you're following. It makes sense so far. Please don't hesitate if you like to write your questions already when you think of them, and we can then take them up later on. So going to the middle, the energy part, destination 3 and 4 of the cluster 5. So here I have the entire structure in one slide. Hope it is readable for you. So the energy part is divided into two parts, two destinations. We have destination 3, which focuses more on the energy supply part, with 3 different call areas that you can see on the slide, and we will go through them. And then destination 4, which is focused then more on the energy use. And there you have 2 parts, one focusing on buildings and one on industry. And what is very good to keep in mind for energy and for the whole cluster 5, and it was the same in Horizon 2020 for energy topics, that you have several deadlines, which is a bit annoying, to be honest. It's hard to keep up sometimes, but be very careful with the deadlines and do check them. Some of them are already now in early autumn. Going to the destination 3, first of all, so where you have 3 parts. So renewable energy, you have the energy systems, grids and storage, and then you have CCUS, so carbon capture, utilization and storage. And here I have just on this slide, I have gathered so the key strategic orientations from the strategic plan of the program that this part is focusing on, and then the expected impact, the general expected impact, again from the strategic planning. So more efficient, clean, sustainable, secure and competitive energy supply through new solutions for smart grids and energy systems based on more performant renewable energy solutions. That is the main goal of this part. I think I will close my camera for a while. So starting with the first call area, which is the renewables part of the destination 3, I will not go in specifically into the topics, but I will rather give an overview of each of the parts. So for renewable energy, so renewable energy technologies, of course, they provide major opportunities to replace and substitute carbon from fossil origin in other economic sectors such as heating and cooling, transportation, agriculture, industry. And we can also expect that we can create more jobs than from fossil fuels with renewable energies. And it is for reaching sustainable and global climate neutral future, renewable energies, of course, form the baseline, and it's very important. And the aim here is to reach a strong European legal leadership for renewable energy. So here an overview what is being aimed with this part. So more established, solid renewable energy technologies, and further diversifying the technology portfolio that we have. And yes, carbon neutral solutions for transport and industry. And here what is important is to keep in mind the synergies with activities in the cluster 4 for industry and the cluster 6 for biomass related. For renewable energies parts, we keep the same idea that we had in Horizon 2020. So there is a portfolio approach in the sense that you see, while there are some topics that are more bottom-up, so you can focus on any renewable energy technology, as we had in Horizon 2020, but then we have technology-specific topics we have on solar energy, biofuels, on hydro energy, on wind energy, on ocean energy, and so on and so forth. Overall, we have 20 topics for renewable energies for 2021. We have actually, compared to Horizon 2020, the last work program, we have a considerable amount of research and innovation actions, and so 13 and 5 innovation actions, and then 2 coordination and support actions. We have 2 deadlines. For 3 topics, we have the deadline already in end of August, and for the rest, it's 5th of January 2022. And it's definitely the biggest part in terms of budget, with 325 million euros, so from all the energy areas. So moving on to the energy systems, grids and storage part. Here, let me just check my notes. So going a little bit deeper what we have inside. So the efficient and effective network management is the key to integration of renewables in an efficient way that ensures cost effectiveness and affordability, security of supply, and grid stability. So focus is on systemic aspects to enhance flexibility, reliability, and resilience of the energy system. Real-time monitoring and optimization are necessary for the flexibility, for instance. And what is important is exploiting synergies between electricity, heating and cooling networks, gas networks, transport infrastructure, digital infrastructure, so on and so forth. Here, the role of citizens and communities, the end users, are important, and as mentioned before, so consider the inclusion of social sciences and humanities in your projects where relevant. And yes, we're looking for increasing the capacity of integrating renewable energy sources into the system. And also there is an importance of energy storage technologies, not looking at batteries and hydrogen as they are addressed elsewhere, but this is the storage is there. We have overall 11 topics for 2021. 1 research and innovation action, so mostly innovation actions, so we are talking about higher tier levels, and then we have 4 coordination and support actions. There is 1 deadline, and it's very early. It's 26th of August for this year, and 149 million euros for the topics under this area. Then going forward to CCUS, so carbon capture, utilization and storage, which is considered an important in terms of reaching the EU Green Deal, so the climate neutrality for especially the energy-intensive industries and the power sector. And it's particularly important and has a crucial role for industries where other alternatives don't exist. And here we're looking at CCUS potential also when combining with sustainable biomass or low carbon hydrogen from natural gas. And what is also in and you can see in the topic actually, there is a focus on developing kind of the CCUS in industrial clusters, hubs, and including the system planning aspects. And the aim is to demonstrate the full CCUS chain in Europe. And here, because there were only 2 topics, so I directly included them here. So one dealing with, it's a CSA with the integration of CCUS in hubs and clusters. And then there is a research and innovation action on cost reduction of CO2 capture. And both have a very early deadline also for this part. Okay, I see that for at least one participant, the microphone is off. For me, it seems it's on, so it might be that it's problem at your end. Can maybe my colleague confirm if you can hear me? Or someone else? Okay, great, thank you. So maybe it's better to check, yes, you have some advice from my colleague on the chat. So hopefully we can continue normally. So going into the destination 4, which looks at the energy use part of the energy area. Here we have two parts, one focusing on buildings and the other one on industry. And here I put only the expected impact for the whole area. So from the strategic planning, efficient and sustainable use of energy, accessible for all, is ensured through a clean energy system and a just transition. Here you have, like said, the building part. So the specific impact for the buildings, it's technological and socioeconomic breakthroughs for achieving climate neutrality and the transition to zero pollution of the building stock by 2050, based on inclusive and people-centric research and innovation. And then for industry, so we are looking at increased energy efficiency in industry and reducing industry's greenhouse gas and air pollutant emissions through recovery, upgrade, and/or conversion of industrial excess waste heat, and through electrification of heat generation. So this is the overall impact that we are looking for this part. Going into the first part, which is the building stock. Here, so the overview for this part. So we have two specific impacts that we are looking at. So to have more energy efficient building stocks, more understanding, which is built on more accurate understanding of the building's performance in Europe and the related evolutions. And looking at building stocks that combine energy efficiency, renewable energy sources, and digital and smart technologies. And here, what you should keep in mind for your proposals to look at the new European Powerhouse Initiative, which was launched by Ursula von der Leyen under the Green Deal, which is not only focusing on more the tangible, so the actual building, so to say, but really looking into interdisciplinarity of living areas and combining how future ways of living situated at crossroads between art, culture, social inclusion, science, and technology. And it's kickstarting the European Renovation Wave, which is under the Green Deal as well, and also looks to make the European Union a leader in the circular economy. So here, think cross-disciplinarity. So think again, the human-centric, the social sciences, humanities, but also consider the design, consider the arts, the culture. In Luxembourg, we have, for instance, the creative industries cluster. So consider joining with, for instance, SMEs from the creative sector. And for this part, some topics are under the co-programmed European partnerships, which is called Build for People. So keep that in mind for looking at partners, looking at where the topics come from, look at the partnership. We have overall 5 topics for 2021, which are all innovation actions. And we have again 2 deadlines, so October and so 21 and January 22. And overall budget 73 million for 21 topics. Okay, good. Moving on to the industrial facilities part of the energy use. So here we have the expected impact from the strategic plan that this area aims at. I already read it in the introduction part, so I'm not going to read it again. So here under cluster 5, the focus is on the thermal energy management in industry, but it's again important to keep in mind that there is a bulk of research and innovation activities for industry in the cluster 4 that are relevant to this theme as well. So check and keep that in mind as well for relevant topics for you if you're interested in this area. You have 2 innovation actions for 2021, and again, October 21 is the deadline. And we have 30 million euros for the topics. Good. I hope you're still following and it's more or less clear and makes sense. And I actually, yes, this is actually coming towards the end. So if you have questions, you can think about them. That was the covering the whole energy part of the cluster 5. Hope you have now a clear understanding more or less where you can find your topics. For Luxembourg participants, you are very welcome to come back to me to actually then see the work program drafts that are still drafts, and to find your topic and get our advice to identify those good opportunities for you. Here, finally, a few tips and advice from my side for successful energy proposals. I have here a picture on the right side of a mountain to make you remember that the topic that normally you focus on one topic, of course, or maybe 2 topics, but the topic is tip of the mountain. So there is a lot of work behind it. There is the big picture. There are the policy goals of the European Union. There is a lot of research, technologies, innovation, what has already been done, and a lot of initiative, such as the Strategic Energy Technology Plan, which is a coordination mechanism for funding for energy technologies in member states, but it's relevant for Horizon Europe as well. So there is a lot that the topic is built on. So please keep that in mind when you build your proposals. You need to know what exists before. It can help you also to understand the topic text and what is expected. Connect with the community. So there also consider who are so there are several European innovation technology platforms. ETPs, actually, European technology platforms that normally feed in towards the topics, towards the work programs. And it's good to look for partners from these already set up communities or even join them. Look at the partnerships. And as said, consider social sciences and humanities. And for international cooperation, that's always very welcome. Sometimes it's specifically mentioned. For energy, it's good to keep in mind the mission innovation for clean energy transition, which is an initiative launched with the Paris Climate Agreement, and where EU has taken kind of a leading role, and several EU member states are directly a member. But just a few tips for you to keep in mind. And finally, where else to look? So besides Horizon Europe, there are other EU funding opportunities which we are not in charge of, but just for you to keep in mind in case Horizon Europe doesn't offer what you're looking for. So you have the Innovation Fund, which is under the EU emissions trading system. and it's driving clean innovative technologies towards the market, so it's closer to the market. Normally rather large scale investment projects. So, and you see here, it's the energy intensive industries, renewables, energy storage, CCUS that are the themes for this fund. Then you have the LIFE program that is also relaunching or starting for this programming period, and it has as a novelty an area which tackles energy transition as well. And it has a climate change part, and it has circular economy. So it might be relevant for you. But that's it from my side. I'm checking who is there. Hope it was clear. And if not, please ask your questions or come back to us later. I don't see any questions coming in. So if not, I thank you for participating, and please do come back to us with any questions. If you're not from Luxembourg, come back to us with good ideas for projects, and we can look for Luxembourgish partners. And since I don't see any questions, I would like to wish you a very, very nice day and hope to be in contact soon. Thank you.